Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verses 49 to 56 will be covered today. And this is the second part of the account of Bani Israel. These are the references, and again in this case as well, some excerpts are quoted from this volume. And this is our contact. We go to the first verse of today's presentation, reminding Bani Israel about their past condition. وَإِذْ نَجَّيْنَكُم مِّنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ يُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. Now, part of this verse has been covered previously as well. And what it says is, do you remember when you were under the subjugation of Pharaoh, he used to seek out all kinds of punishments to oppress you with. And this is the way Mulukiyat functions. And we can see that working in today's world as well, that people in power find out various ways to suppress others. The worst kind of punishment among these was that he used to keep creating parties among you. Very glaring evidence of this is in today's world. And what he used to do was that in this way, those eminent individuals of your nation, in which he would see the sparkle of the virtue of manliness, and from which he would perceive a potential threat, by humiliating and disgracing them, he would render them ineffective, especially those who accepted Iman in the messenger Musa. And this is going on in today's world as well in all man-made systems. And that category which was devoid of these potentials, he used to elevate them by making them his esteemed and close courtiers. In this way, from a collective status, your nation would keep on becoming weaker. Because all these measures are taken by dictatorial powers, that is the man-made systems, people in power, to suppress others, and they want to keep them weak. This is indeed the blueprint of the politics of Mulukiyat. You obeyed the laws of Allah, so in the first instance, he relieved you from this punishment of Pharaoh. This matter was supreme blessing for you from your Rabb, because as a result of this, opportunities for your reformation were required. So here the Quran has also presented the solution for that, and we will go through in some detail. First slide is reminding is part of human self-development. After letting Bani Israel know about some of their salient, that is the collective psyche and their crimes of that collective psyche, here the Quran has referred to the past history of theirs, reminding them about their escape from the grip of Pharaoh, who had subjugated them in all kinds of chains. The Quran has referred to this vital trait of the human psyche, where reminding, warning, and admonishment are employed to make us realize the importance of our finite life on this planet. And this is throughout the Quran that we are reminded that your stay on this planet is short, and if you want to get best out of your life and also of the life of the hereafter, then you should or we should follow the wahi of Allah, that is the guidance which is given in the Quran. There are some among them who pay attention, especially those who are already questioning the unjust systems created by the non-Quranic human intellect. So here the Quran is reminding Bani Israel, and through that reminding is reminding all of us. The Quran has highlighted this aspect by presenting evidence of the man-made systems where those possessing higher potentials are ignored, sidelined, and in some cases even persecuted. For example, the story of the messenger Yusuf, where he was locked up for being righteous and pious. And in all man-made systems, whoever raises voice against the evil of the system, those people are persecuted and locked up. And we witness that in today's world. This means that those who are dissatisfied with this kind of state of affairs need to stand up to counter such a system by following the Quranic procedure of acquiring power in the land. And I have highlighted it. We have gone through it previously as well, but it is good to remind ourselves, because this is the pattern Quran also follows, that is reminds us again and again in different styles, in different ways. We can see that direct confrontation against such a tyrannical system will eliminate such individuals. And this is a fact. The moment this kind of a system finds that so and so is trying to stand up against them, they eliminate them. And this is where the wahi of Allah is helpful, because we have seen in the case of Bani Israel that when Messenger Musa stood up against Pharaoh, there was a lot of tussle between the two. However, the messenger Musa received the requisite protection from the divine law by following the wahi from Allah. And this is something which we should carry away from today's presentation, that if we follow the procedure given in the Quran, then we come under the protection of the divine law. And as long as we stay there, the success comes in this direction. Next slide is Bani Israel and Muslims of today. This verse also points to another important aspect of the working of the divine law. Allah has pointed to this fact that He was aware of the misery, subjugation, and exploitation of Bani Israel by Pharaoh and his people. And this is an important point which comes out of this verse, that Allah was witnessing all this which was happening at that time. And He's also witnessing what is going on in the world of today. So He's aware of what is, for example, happening in Gaza, in Ukraine, and elsewhere in the world. However, He did not and could not intervene directly and waited as per His law. And this is the most important point to notice over here, that He does not interfere in human world directly. It is through human hands. Until events reached to that stage where the messenger Musa, looking for guidance, arrived on the scene. And this is an important point in these verses and throughout the Quran as well, that unless people are looking for guidance, they are not going to get guidance. Some people of Bani Israel would have been praying for Allah's help, as is 2015 verse, we can go through it. But since the wahi of Allah was not with them in its pure form, hence these desires of theirs remained raw and unable to find direction. So prayers go wasted, because Allah follows His laws. And if we understand His laws, we will also follow His laws rather than keep praying. This aspect is covered in detail in Surah Taha and in a few other places. Allah had not put Bani Israel into some kind of test, as this part of the verse is Zalikum bala'um min rabbikum azim. This is normally translated as that this was some kind of a test from Allah's side, or Allah as a Rabb. Of the verse is normally translated. Events take place in the human world as per His laws, and the Quran relates these to Allah, that is His law. So Allah doesn't have to test us. Actually, we test our own abilities. The Quran tells us that we have all the potentials to counter batil. And if we stand up for haqq, then that means we will bring out our best by following the laws of Allah which are noted in the Quran. If Bani Israel had bothered to analyze the law of requital, what you sow, so shall you reap. And this law, that is the law of requital, is known to human beings right from beginning, because they see it through cause and effect. They would have figured this out as the messenger Yusuf and others had passed it on to them. I've noted over here two verses which support this particular stance which I have noted over here. We witness the same state of affairs among Muslims of today who have become the people of the book of the initial era of Islam. And this is the fact, because people under the sectarian Islam are not following that precise Islam which is given in the Quran. All the prevalent rituals have become ends in themselves, whereas these were the means within the system of deen. When Tolu Islam directs their attention towards the pure Quran, they do not wish to pause and reflect. And we witness that by using the platform of Tolu Islam, that people do not like the pure Quran and they do not like that system which is given in the Quran. They rather like to follow their religious way of worshipping and following the rituals. Rather, they feel contented with the sectarian versions of Islam. The Pharaoh of the world is exploiting them in exactly the way that the Pharaoh of that era did. So this is happening right in front of us. Now over here, what I've done is I have took out one slide from one of our previous presentations, and I thought to remind ourselves what is going on in the world. Just to remind ourselves, Allah does not interfere directly. And we can see a child over here, and we see these kind of children across the world in billions. And seeking human kindness, there is an old man, and of course, he is in need. And there's another one probably looking for some job. And this is a nice cartoon which sums up the capitalist system or the man-made systems. Calculate and donate your zakat this Ramadan, and we see this under the religious domain. And then charitable work. First, create the conditions which deprive human beings, turn them into needy and orphans and yatim and miskeen, and then create charities to make them beggars. And there's a verse 85 in Surah Al-Baqarah which sums it up. And then, of course, the refugees all over the world. And, of course, these dead bodies in Gaza. And the Quran says, وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالنِّسَاءِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ الَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا أَخْرِجْنَا مِنْ هَٰذِهِ الْقَرْيَةِ الظَّالِمِ أَهْلُهَا وَاجْعَل لَّنَا مِن لَّدُنكَ وَلِيًّا وَاجْعَل لَّنَا مِن لَّدُنكَ نَصِيرًا. And why you should not fight in the cause of Allah and of those who, being weak, are ill-treated. Now, this first line sums it up, that Allah is asking this Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen that you go and do justice on His behalf in the world where people are supplicating to Him for His help. And since there is no Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen in the world, so Allah, this particular verse is literally suspended. It's not in action. No action can be taken on this verse. Men, women, and children whose cry is, Our Rabb, rescue us from this town whose people are oppressors. Raise for us from you one who will help. And over here, we have gone through this procedure as well. The procedure is Iman plus solid deeds, then come together, then education and training, and which should lead to uniting hearts, and keep doing it till the power is acquired in the land. Now let us go to the next verse. Destruction of Pharaoh witnessed by Bani Israel. There was a long lead time before this event. وَإِذْ فَرَقْنَا بِكُمُ الْبَحْرَ فَأَنْجَيْنَكُمْ وَأَغْرَقْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. So from the first verse to the second verse, there is a gap, and we have to fill it in from elsewhere from the Quran. And then following the tussle with the people of Pharaoh, that time arrived when you set out leaving Egypt behind, and Pharaoh's army came in pursuit of you, until you eventually reached that place where that part of the sea, a river, was in front of you, and the army of Pharaoh was in your rear. The term used over here is Bahar, which can mean sea as well as the river. You were encircled in such a way that through our guidance you found a dry path across the sea, and in this way we saved you from the clutches of Pharaoh's army, and he and all his army were drowned. And all this took place before your eyes. So this was evidence-based event which Bani Israel and the messenger Musa as well as brother Haroon, they witnessed it. Events of the past help to transform psyche. The events and account between verses 49 and 50 are covered in other places of the Quran. There was a respite of many years for Pharaoh and his cohorts before they met their tyrannical fate as noted in this verse. Here the Quran has informed Rasulullah and the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen and of course us that when forces supporting Al-Haq rise up, although events are invisible initially, the law of requital starts to lay down the foundation for future events. So that part of the law of requital which is dealing with Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, that starts becoming effective. The tussle between Bani Israel under the leadership of the messenger Musa and his brother Haroon and Pharaoh and his hordes finally reached a stage where Bani Israel were told to leave Egypt towards the free environment of the desert valley of Sinai, because they needed power, and without power there can be no deen. So they left Pharaoh's subjugation with a view to go to an empty land where they could carry out the procedure for going further or to be established in the land. Some among Bani Israel had acquired education, training, and self-development using the divine guidance which was received up to that point in time. We had covered some of these aspects under Surah Yunus and I think chapter 11 as well. Pharaoh, having become frustrated with the opposition of the messenger Musa, thought of assassinating him, but did not resort to this due to opposition from within his courtiers. However, he let Bani Israel leave Egypt, but made up his mind to chase after them with his army once they were away from the populated centers. And this is what any tyrannical ruler or dictator in the world does. And we have seen this happening, for example, in the case of Venezuela and elsewhere as well. All these regime changes are part of this procedure carried out by the man-made systems, whoever acquires power. This verse reminds Bani Israel that they did witness the drowning of Pharaoh with their own eyes. And this is an important thing, that these evidences Quran is presenting before us, and we can relate to it by looking at the world in which we are living today. This was not a chance event, and this is an important aspect which I have noted here in the light of the Quran. It followed the precise divine law of extending help to the messenger Musa, still available to any Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. We go to the next verse, 51. Iman needs to involve acceptance by both intellect and emotions. وَإِذْ وَعَدْنَا مُوسَى أَرْبَعِينَ لَيْلَةً ثُمَّ اتَّخَذْتُمُ الْعِجْلَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ وَأَنْتُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. And having reached the valley of Sinai, where your training was taking place, as per our instruction, Musa separated from you for 40 nights. Of course, now was the time for the messenger Musa to get more wahi. Then during just this short period, moving away from Allah, you started to worship the Heifer, a deity of the Egyptians. And in this way adopted rebellion against the divine laws, and you did zulm, that is injustice to yourselves. And Quran says, وَأَنْتُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. That is, by leaving the path of Allah, leaving the path of Wahi, then you did injustice to your own selves. Next slide is the next phase of the life of Bani Israel after gaining freedom from the clutches of Pharaoh. After pointing to the destruction of Pharaoh and his army, in this verse the Quran has left a gap for us to fill in the details from our own life. Bani Israel moved through the desert under the guidance of the messenger, that is, I put down messengers, if we include both messenger Musa as well as his brother Haroon, in the form of a caravan. It is assumed that they halted and rested on the way at various places on this journey. The messenger Musa was familiar with this area. And we remember when messenger Musa had escaped from the clutches of Pharaoh and went to Madian. While Bani Israel stopped at some place, after handing over the leadership to his brother Haroon, Musa departed for a short period to receive further revelation. And this is the part which we have to fill in the blanks ourselves from our own experience of dealing with the issues of life as of today. We can assume here that the previous segment of the Wahi was applicable to the period spent under Pharaoh. Now, having become free from his subjugation, some further guidance was required for this phase of their education and training, and of course their self-development. In this verse, the Quran has omitted some details, and these are covered elsewhere in the Quran, and has described that Bani Israel resorted to the worship of a deity, a heifer, which they should have given up. This alludes to the weakness of the human psyche, because they couldn't take out that religious part of their worship when they were under the control of Pharaoh. So this is something which we should keep in mind, that when people are coming from the religious background, we have to give them time. The Quran has declared their conduct to be zulm, that is injustice to their own selves, and of course they do injustice to others as well, particularly children who are being brought up under such an environment, against their own selves, demonstrating the seriousness of their actions. This also points to the state of the self-development, which had not furthered very much on this path despite the efforts made in Egypt. We can relate this to the state of the psyche of sectarian Muslims in the world of today. It's a great instruction for all of us on this platform that once we are following the Quran, we should not expect people to change very quickly. We have to give them time, and there has to be a repeated education and training aspect of it so that people keep reminding themselves. We go to the next verse, 52. There is a provision for overlooking human errors during the period of respite. This will form part of the system of justice under Deen. Summa fauna ankum min ba'de zalika la'allakum tashkurun. And of course, over here from verse 51 to 52, we have to fill in the blanks from other parts of the Quran where this account is given in more detail. But even at this, we did not spurn you. That is, we did not reject you. Allah says that human beings were not rejected, that they had done this kind of injustice to themselves. Instead, as is noted further, for example, in verse 56, which is coming later, erased the harmful effects of this wrong path of yours and provided you once again with an opportunity so that you could develop your potentials fully. So tashkurun comes here, and we have gone through the meanings of shukr previously. Next slide is guidance provided for the future. Here again, the Quran has omitted those details which are covered elsewhere. After having confronted his people with the wrong they had deliberately committed, Musa had taken steps to address the whole issue. We have to assume here that all this took some time, probably over the course of many days, weeks, or maybe months, to make the people realize the grave error they had made in his absence. And this was a very grave error if we look at it from the shirk point of view, which is considered supreme injustice in the light of the Quran. Because human beings do tremendous injustice to themselves by following the wrong path. And over here, Bani Israel knew that they are not supposed to do it. Because the whole point of the messenger Musa and his brother was to pass on the education of the Wahi of Allah. In this verse 2090, it is noted that the messenger Haroon did warn them against the wrong they were committing. And these details we will cover later on. And these are, I think we have covered it previously as well, either in Surah Yunus or that is the 11th chapter. The way this verse is presented, it appears that Bani Israel realized their mistake and had committed to some kind of tawbah, because the verse notes, Summa afauna ankum min ba'de zalik. Even then we did overlook after this event. Then the verse concludes with an expectation that Bani Israel would have learned from this event and committed to mending their ways. La'allakum tashkurun. And shukr means that they should bring out their best, that is their own potentials, by following the guidance of Wahi and by listening to the messenger. After learning a lesson from this wrong conduct of theirs, hope they have made up their minds to act according to the permanent values. Some further aspects are picked up in verse 54. We go to the next verse 53. The messenger Musa was provided with the book for the guidance of his people. وَإِذْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابَ وَالْفُرْقَانَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. For this purpose, we provided Musa with a code of laws which was such that it would clearly separate haq from batil and was the criterion for the permanent values. So over here, Quran refers to all wahi which Bani Israel had received so far through the messenger Musa as well as messenger Haroon as Al-Kitab and Al-Furqan. It was given for this reason, so that you could reach your intended destination in its light, that is the book. The book provides guidance and helps decide in human affairs. Because once we receive the book, for example, the Quran, then it becomes very formal. We cannot say that we did not know about it. The Quran presents Allah's guidance, and of course, it tells us that how our life will change once we follow its guidance. And man-made systems are great evidence for this, because the Quran also tells us that if you follow man-made systems, this is the way your world will look like. In this account, the Quran pauses and reminds the messenger and his companions and us that Musa was provided with a book of guidance, which was also revealed progressively in parts according to the events taking place in their life, i.e., relating to the permanent values. And this is an important point as well, progressively in parts. We have to understand the Quran as well, progressively in parts. We cannot understand the Quran by going through it from beginning to the end the way we do it under the sectarian Islam, and nobody knows what they are listening to or what they are reading. Quran has to be approached progressively, individually, and then collectively, going through each precept very carefully and then seeing how this will manifest in the practical world. We need to assume here that this book contained the permanent values and other related details, just like the Quran, which met the needs of the guidance required for Bani Israel according to the social environment in which they were living. In this verse, it is called Al-Kitab and Al-Furqan. The Quran is also called Al-Kitab and Al-Furqan, i.e., covering many of the aspects which were revealed to the messenger Musa, because the values are immutable. Allah's words are immutable, and all these consistently must be the same, beginning from the first wahi which was given to mankind. Al-Furqan means those issues in which human beings differ and are in need of the guidance so as to reach the correct decision. This eliminates the chance of making mistakes and optimizes human efforts and decision making. And this is an important point, that we want to live life where we make minimum mistakes and get the maximum out of our life. And this is what Quran does, or the Wahi of Allah does. And this is what Bani Israel were told by Messenger Musa, that once we leave the subjugation of Pharaoh, then we will be in a free land where we will make our own decisions according to the book of Allah. Al-Furqan explained. The Quran has also mentioned that Haroon was also given a book, that is Wahi. Ataina Musa wa Haroon al-Furqana wa Ziyan wa Zikral lil Muttaqeen. We had bestowed that code of laws on Musa and Haroon, which differentiated between right and wrong and was a beacon of light and eminence for those people who wish to avoid the pitfalls of life. A lot summed up in this one verse, Furqan, Ziya, and then Muttaqeen. This is confirmed in another verse, Wataina humal kitab al mustabeen. We gave al-kitab to both of them, that is Musa and Haroon, which made things clear. From these places, it is clear that Messenger Haroon was also bestowed with Wahi in the same way that Musa received Wahi from Allah. And Wahi itself is what is called the Book of Allah. And that is an important point for us to note, that Wahi itself means the Book of Allah. And to say that Wahi has been directed towards me, but I have not received a book, is a clear evidence of ignorance about the reality of Wahi and the book. The fundamental attribute or characteristic of this book is said to be Furqan, and this characteristic is not confined to this book alone. It belongs to every Wahi of Allah. The basic meaning of al-Farq is the hair parting, due to which hair from one side is parted from the other side. Al-Furqan is that code of guidance because of which Haqq and Batil, legitimate and illegitimate, right and wrong become separated so clearly that there is no possibility of even a hair's breadth of ambiguity or confusion remaining in them. The Quran has also been called Furqan from this aspect. So Quran makes things clear in which we differ, and then it helps us to remove our differences, and then it minimizes our time towards our self-development and towards getting power in the land. Next verse 54, Bani Israel were prone to disobedience. وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ يَا قَوْمِ إِنَّكُمْ ظَلَمْتُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ بِاتَّخَاذِكُمُ الْإِجْلَ فَتُوبُوا إِلَى بَارِئِكُمْ فَاقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ عِنْدَ بَارِئِكُمْ فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِنَّهُ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. When after 40 nights Musa returned to his nation and saw that the nation is engrossed in worshipping the calf, he said to them that you have only caused harm to your own selves by making this calf your deity. You have not caused any loss to anyone else. Due to this, you have sunk very low from the level of being human. And that is an important sentence here, that you have lowered your own status as a human being. You have stopped being human when you did this. Now, the way to retrieve that status is that you should acknowledge your mistake and with great humility and meekness bow your heads in front of the laws of Allah. This is the only method by which you can once again benefit from the pleasant and life-giving outcomes of the laws of Allah, which at the present time have turned their faces away from you. These laws encompass their characteristic that whenever anyone turns towards them, they turn their direction towards Him, together with all the means of rububiyyat with them. Some explanation of this verse, a few aspects of this verse. After realizing his mistake, man retraces his steps in order to tread on the correct path. Then the laws of Allah appear before him with great luster and grandeur, and they guide him towards the correct path. We have gone through the meaning of Tawbah previously as well, but I thought just to quote it again and remind ourselves. From this respect, Allah is called Tawwab, and this attribute of Allah creates a very beautiful and lovely concept of Him, i.e., if due to the realization of your error, with tears of regret in your eyes, you take one step towards Allah. So that feeling of guilt is important, that feeling of regret is important if we have made a mistake, because then it prevents the repetition of it in the future. Then taking 2 steps forward, Allah will take you into the bosom of His rahmat. And 2 steps over here can also mean that we are saved from one, that going into the wrong direction and wasting time, and second is we come back to the same point where we had made the mistake, and then guidance is given to us to go in the right direction. And this is a great rahmat of Allah. This attribute of Allah is defined as At-Tawwabur Rahim, the one who confers rahmat very swiftly in return. It is stated in this verse, Fatubu ila barikum. In this verse, the attribute of Al-Bari of Allah has been presented before us. This means that from the various constituents in the universe which have been created by Allah, to mix them together in a specific balance or proportion in such a way that a new thing should come into existence from this. And this is a beautiful part of Allah's creation, that we are given this body which has come into existence through various constituents which are present in the earth. And this is the biological side of us. And then, of course, we are also provided that divine energy, Ruh, because of which we have got choice and intent and are able to use what is available on this planet. Separation of the non-essential elements, i.e., those elements which are not required for the creation of this particular thing in this way, is called the attribute of Al-Bari. And human beings also do it. For example, all the manufacturing, we can see that how cars are produced, how aeroplanes are produced, how other conveniences of life are produced from the elements which are available on the planet, i.e., the ones who separate. That is, these aspects which are kept within us. For example, the potentials which are within us, they have the ability to come out in a different form, in a higher form, if we use the wahi of Allah. When the unnecessary excess from these elements is separated, then the new things takes on a particular form. And over here we can say that the new life can emerge out of us if we follow the directions of the Quran. We should relate this to our latent potentials. Next slide is further elaboration. Bani Israel committed shirk, i.e., they mixed batil with haq, both became intermingled. For tawbah, it was firstly required that batil should be separated from haq, and this is part of Al-Bari. For this objective, it was instructed that you should return towards that Allah who is Al-Bari. The consequence of this return will be that batil will become detached from the concepts in your hearts and minds, that is, beliefs. So it is important for us to always keep in mind that it is all about changing our own psyche. if we are carrying out certain deeds which are not in line with the Quran, that means our psyche is at fault. Our psyche is contaminated with shirk. And that is how we should view human beings around us who are not guided by the Quran. And you will become enabled to obey the laws of purely one Allah. Bani Israel are told to turn to Allah. فَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. We have said in connection with the killing of sons that in the Quran the meanings of zabhun and katlun are not only the cutting of a throat or to kill, they also mean to suppress someone. By violating the command of Allah, Bani Israel had committed the shirk of calf worship, which was a serious crime, and the messengers recognized that. They were told that if you wish to rectify your loss, then the first condition for this is to abandon your intractability and rebellion and bow your hearts in obedience to Allah. So this is something which was within their hearts, within their minds. So they had to take it out from their subconscious and think that their proclivity towards this kind of worship is something which is like a poison. It will eat up all their good deeds. Bow down very deeply. Bow down to such an extent that no suspicion remains in them of any wickedness or rebellion. And this is only possible by becoming extremely aware, extremely conscious of their own acts and of course their own thoughts. After doing this, it will be possible that you will adopt the correct path. As a result of this, your loss will be rectified and your potentials will also become developed. Tolu Islam aims to provide awareness, education, and training in this aspect. I put down this just to remind ourselves that by coming together and using this platform and all the material available to us, and of course, this interaction on these talks and these sessions will help us to become more alive, to promote that new life which we have managed to create within our own self. Let us go to the next verse 55. وَإِذْ قُلْتُمْ يَا مُوسَى لَن نُؤْمِنَ لَكَ حَتَّى نَرَى اللَّهَ جَهْرَةً فَأَخَذَتْكُمُ الصَّاعِقَةُ وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. This is another very interesting verse. We had given you a perspicuous code of laws whose outcomes were to demonstrate automatically to you that it is in reality the law of Allah, not self-created by some human being, but instead that by acting on it, you recognize Allah through its outcomes. You had become so habituated to physical entities that you began to say to Musa that you were not prepared to obey any of his directions until the time that we do not see that Allah unveiled before our eyes, before our own eyes, from whose direction you claim that this law has been revealed. And we can see these kind of concepts and beliefs existing within the domain of various religions. Whereas it is obvious that Allah is not some physical being who can be seen with the eyes. He can be recognized through a visionary perception from his divinity and by witnessing the outcomes of his laws. The demand of yours was to see Allah unveiled, and the state of your courage was such that with the thunderous noise and tremor of an earthquake, you lost your senses, although you were witnessing that it was only an earthquake. This was because your superstitions, due to which you had even made a calf into a deity and had created fear of these manifestations of nature in your hearts. This is exactly what shirk does to the human psyche. And this is another important point, that shirk, how it destroys human psyche, because it contaminates human psyche and human beings start fearing those things about which they should actually be in a position to utilize them. Some elaboration on the demand to visualize Allah. Bani Israel were from the offspring of those messengers and at any rate declared themselves to be their followers, who used to give an invitation to accept Iman in unseen Allah. But now they were bent upon not accepting such an Allah. The being of Allah is such an utterly unseen reality which is beyond the limits of human conjecture, idea, supposition, imagination, and far above and beyond the limits of our perceptions. It is proclaimed in the Quran regarding the being of Allah, no being can grasp him, but his grasp is over all being. He is above all comprehension, yet is acquainted with all things. No eye can grasp the being of Allah because he is non-physical. Our own self is non-physical, and we can't see the self of any one of us who are around us and our own self. And that doesn't mean that Allah is like ourself, but what it means is that Allah is not visible and there is no need to see him, because what Quran is telling us is about values and his concept to develop our own self. Although Allah is present at every place and he encompasses every eye vision, but this encompassment of his is not in a perceptible manner. In fact, as we advance in the study of the Quran and bring out some of our potentials, the need to see Allah by someone, that also disappears, because the Quran is putting before us about the issues of our own self and this finite life, and then go on to the next life. In an extremely invisible and imperceptible way, leaving aside tangible human deeds, he is aware even of the thoughts passing through the human heart. And this means that we should also be fully aware of the thoughts going through our own mind. Next is some further elaboration. It was this very ignorance of theirs about which it is stated, the people of the book asked you to cause a book to descend to them from heaven. Indeed, they asked Musa for an even greater thing, for they said, show us Allah in public. Another thing which Quran is telling us, that there is no question of miracles. Miracle means, the word equivalent word is mojza, which means where human intellect cannot find out any reason for that particular event, something which is supranatural. And Quran says that we are rational beings. We have been given intellect and reasoning with a view to see everything happening in the world and find out the cause behind it. And this is our word, in which Allah does not interfere directly, so there is no question of miracles in our life. O Rasool, the people of the book, that is the Jews, say to you that we will accept your claim to messengerhood as being true when you show us a ready-made book descended from the heavens. In reply, Allah stated that this demand of theirs is nevertheless a lighter one in comparison to that demand which they had made of their messenger Musa. They had demanded that Musa himself show Allah unveiled before them. And we can see these concepts of miracles exist in various religions as well. And that indicates that their rational side, intellectual side is faulty, contaminated, and they have to come to terms with that and come out of it in order to get maximum benefit from this life. And we can see under the secular system or secular concepts where people are non-religious, they don't believe in any miracles. They in fact are doing miracles in technology right on the planet in front of our eyes. The matter which needs to be understood is just this, that the demand was to see Allah unveiled, and the state of their weakness and cowardice was such that with the flash of lightning and the tremors resulting from the earthquake, they took leave of their senses, even though both these things were from among physical manifestations. This is the state of the courage and morale of those who make deities out of physical things. The Quran has exposed in clear words the fear and terror of those who do shirk. And we see this prevalent among religionists. Signs are all around us in the world and universe. At the beginning, it has been explained in the context of the story of Adam that the power to harness the forces of nature has been bestowed as a latent potential in man. From this aspect, the Malaika, that is the universal forces, are prostrated before Adam. But the condition of those who make deities out of physical things is such that they remain fearful and quaking due to these same forces of nature, because they are ignorant of their own potentials and they are ignorant about the values and laws working in the universe. And it is this fear that compels them to prostrate before them. The nation whose body trembles with fear in this way before the forces of nature, how can it assess the supremacy and authority of Allah? And Quran says, وَمَا قَدْرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. No just estimate of Allah do they make. They have simply not praised Allah correctly. This was proclaimed about them and people like them. This was that mentality of the Jews referring to which the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen were informed, O you who have Iman, be you not like those who vexed and insulted Musa. Because what did they get out of that? They harmed their own self. O Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, take heed that you do not become like those people who vexed Musa to death with frivolous requests and demands. And that is why Quran has said that whatever is given in the Quran, don't go outside it. There is a verse in Surah Al-Ma'idah which says that this Quran is complete and whatever is required for establishing the system of deen, it is there within this book and it is preserved for all times. One of those demands was also that they wished to see Allah in a physical form. This Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen did not make any demand like this of Rasulullah because they knew that Allah can only be recognized through those attributes which are noted in the Quran. So there was an improvement in the case of Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen at that time in the initial era of Islam. Verse 56, Allah's guidance helps to recognize the states of death and life. Summa ba'athnakum min ba'de mautikum la'allakum tashkurun. Even after this, we caused you stand up and provided you with this opportunity that your potentials can develop fully and your efforts can bear fruition. Again, there is quite a bit of lead time between the previous verse and this one, and we will come across this as we go through the Quran about Bani Israel in more detail. Gaining life out of a dead state, that is getting life or hayat from maut. After this mindset of Bani Israel, they should have been considered as being irredeemable. But as we have already noted, Allah had decreed the training in the Sinai as their period of respite. That is why it is stated that after these kinds of demands of theirs, instead that they be declared as condemned forever, then we raised you up after your death. You had the chance to be grateful, that is to become, to do shukr, that is to bring out your potentials. And we can see that in today's world, if one looks at the injustices and slavery and wars and conflicts going on, one can become hopeless. But once we come to the Quran and this story particularly of Bani Israel, we can see that Quran wants us never to give up. At a basic level, the word maut appears as opposite to hayat. But just as life does not merely mean to breathe, this word is also used metaphorically with numerous other meanings. In the same way, the meaning of death is also not just a cessation in breathing or to die physically. It is used metaphorically for a number of meanings. For example, a thing whose movement halts, and in this way inertia sets in it. So if we are asked to carry out certain functions and bring out our potentials in the light of the Quran, and we fail to do that, the Quran will say that we are in a dead state because we have failed to bring out that life, that new life, which we could, and we failed to do that. Among the Arabs, this word was also used for this, so they used to say, "Matat rihu," i.e., the wind stopped, became still. Or this word was also used for that thing in which no force and heat remains. The meaning of matat and naru was that the fire became extinguished. This word was also used for that thing in which no passion and fervor remains. The meaning of matatil khamru was that no sharpness and fieriness remained in the wine. Some further elaboration. In addition, this word maut has appeared at numerous places in the Quran to mean weakness and feebleness, humiliation and disgrace, dejection and defeatism, the disappearance of vitality, the suspension or absence of intellect and consciousness. And we can see across the globe how much maut is everywhere in today's world if we use this criteria given by the Quran. For example, it is stated in Surah Al-Baqarah in connection with the episode of Bani Israel, "Did you not turn your vision to those who abandoned their homes, though they were thousands in number, for fear of death? Allah said to them, 'Die.' Then he restored them to life. Of course, then they came back and they followed the way of Allah, and then they became very successful. In the Quran, this word has appeared numerous times to denote the emergence of fresh life, the potential for growth in the dead land, barren ground. Truly, you cannot cause the dead to listen, nor can you cause the deaf to hear the call, especially when they turn back when invited to listen in retreat. So when people reject the Quran or do not want to follow the pure Quran, they are essentially making a choice to remain dead, inverted commas. In the next verse, it is stated that, nor can you be a guide to the blind to prevent them from straying. Only those will you get to listen who have Iman in our signs, and they will bow in Islam. So Iman is the beginning of new life within our own self. And then, of course, the solid deeds, we strengthen this life, and then coming together, we proceed on a totally different path of life. This is in fact the path of life. That is, Sirat Mustaqim is the path of life which is defined by the Quran. Next is the meaning of Ba'ath. That term is also used in this verse. From this and numerous other similar places, it is clear that the meaning of death is not physical death everywhere. After this, the word and verse which is being analyzed is Ba'ath. The basic meaning of this word is to remove that thing from the path which is an impediment in the path of free movement, after removing various impediments to continue the movement of something. From this respect, it also means to raise someone up and make them stand on their feet. This is what Ba'ath of Anbiya means. And Ba'ath after death means to bestow life after death. In the Quran, it is stated about Rasulullah that soon will your Rabb raise you to stature of Mahmud. From these meanings, the meaning of the verse being analyzed will be that Bani Israel had lost their potential of intellect and vision and had also ignored the teachings of Messenger Musa, because of which they used to make these kinds of demands that we wish to see Allah unveiled. And this is another important point for us on this platform, is that not to become discouraged, because human beings take time. The life comes into human beings very slowly because they are a product of the man-made systems, and man-made system makes them function in a certain way, that is to look after their material side and of course look after their own interests. And over here the vision is changed and we come under the domain of the permanent values, so it takes time. This was their intellectual and ideological deaths, due to which inertia had set in on them. Allah gave them another chance. After this mental and moral death, by removing their hindrances, gave them fresh life again, so that their efforts do not go to waste but produce full results instead. And that is what it means to do shukr. The meaning of shukr. Meaning of this root shukr is to become filled, to manifest or emerge. Consequently, that she-camel whose mammary glands are heavy with milk is called shakiratu. The meaning of shajaratu is for branches to emerge from the trunk of a tree, and in this way that life which was concealed in it manifested itself. So life coming out of something is shukr. By keeping these meanings of shukran before us, the meaning of sahih mashkur, that is making a praiseworthy effort, will become clear, i.e. such effort and hard work whose full results appear before us. Since human efforts can only produce full results when these are carried out according to the laws established by Allah, this is why Allah is called Shakir, i.e. the one who produces full results from human endeavors. In addition, the word Shakirun will also be used for that individual whose efforts become the bearers of full results in this way. So the way word shukr is used in the religious domain is very misleading. The other meaning of shukran is also to manifest or become manifested. Latent potentials have been kept within man for the full nourishment and development of these potentials, and for them to emerge and appear in this way is their shukr. Amal-e Saleh become the cause for the shukr of Allah's bounties. Because because of these solid deeds, we bring out those potentials, those latent potentials which are kept within us and which we simply cannot bring out under the man-made system by following relative values. Keeping the bounties of Allah open for human welfare, i.e., not keeping them hidden, is the shukr of these bounties. Opposite to this is the word kufr, which means to keep covered and to suppress. And this is a very important aspect of it, that opposite of shukr is kufr. If you do shukr, I will add more unto you. But if you do kufr, truly my punishment is terrible indeed. So kufr is practically being dead. The account of Bani Israel so far summary, the final slide of today's presentation. Before coming to this verse, the Quran has noted a number of causes which contributed to the death-like life of Bani Israel. So what I've done over here is that I have just listed all those points which Quran leveled as a charge against them and said that this is what you used to do, as a result of which you were living a death-like life. Being the possessor of the wahi of Allah, they had promised to follow the path defined by it. They failed to live up to this promise of theirs. Because once we say that we believe in the Quran and we have iman in Allah, that means we make a commitment towards Allah. And that means if we do not fulfill that commitment, that becomes a cause for our destruction and annihilation as far as this life is concerned. And if this life is destroyed, then we have nothing in the hereafter. They resorted to mixing haq with batil and also covered haq with batil. And we have gone through this haq and batil thing. Haq means all those acts, all those values which produce positive results and always produce positive results. And batil means which produce destructive results. And the biggest destruction of results is that we live this life and find ourselves with nothing in the hereafter. And also covered haq with batil. This way they misguided their own selves as well as other people with whom they interacted. And Quran has said they used to do it deliberately, as the Muslims of today are doing deliberately. They should have been a righteous model for other people in the world. So if we do not follow the Quran, then that means not only we harm ourselves, we also promote batil in the world. Because we were the ones who were going to tell others about haq. And if we are following batil ourselves, then how are we going to tell others about haq? They did not establish the system of salat and zakat, and as a consequence lived a disintegrated life, as noted. For example, Quran said, "Wala takraba hazihi shajara," in the story of Adam. They practiced admonishing others while they themselves seldom followed what they preached, contradiction in their word and deed. They did not have firm conviction in the life of the hereafter, hence doubted the functioning of the law of requital. Batil beliefs became prevalent among them. Despite freedom from the clutches of Pharaoh, they contravened the instructions of the messenger Musa, which were based on wahi, and resorted to shirk. Manifestation of a very serious lapse with severe consequences for the human self. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.